morning and welcome to the Tuesday, April 7th, 2009 edition of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski. You're listening to LibertyRadioLive.com. And before I get into two subjects that I'll spend most of the show on today, that's papal infallibility and who is the Antichrist, let me update some of the people that have appeared on this show over the years that either have been in prison and or have been silenced. Let's go way back. Let's start with Willie Rodriguez, the janitor in 9/11, the man who was the last person out of the South Tower before it collapsed, when he helped over 20 people, risking his life to save their lives. Willie told us on this show, and he's told the world many, many times, that he heard explosions along with 15 other of his colleagues right after the plane hit. That was nanoseconds after the plane hit at the top of the South Tower. At the top of the tower, there were explosions below. Now, this was not just one person talking. There was at least over 100 people who've talked about this. If you really do your research, finding people who were in those bottom floors underneath in one of the 4 levels of the towers, where they heard exactly explosions going off. Now, how could that be? It was never reported. It was never discussed by the Whitewash Commission that discussed 9/11. Now, when Willie and myself went to a meeting in New York, when the parents were discussing how to put up their monument, it was a closed-door meeting. I was invited in. I listened to one of the 9/11 commissioners named former Congressman Romer said he did everything under his power to get to the truth, and basically lied to all these parents, because right after the meeting, myself and Willie walked up there and asked him, why didn't you talk to this man? And he ran out of there like a scared dog. And he was protected by his aides, wouldn't answer the questions, and is that telling the truth? Of course not. So there's one, Willie Rodriguez. He's not been killed. He's been silenced. His messages, his testimony never got in the commission, just like the testimony of many scores of other people who talked about explosions below. I talked to at least 20 people. One of them, I remember, is a man by the name of Felipe David, who was he was filling up one of the soda machines downstairs on the first level, when he heard an explosion below, just like Willie and the 14 or 15 other people in his janitor's office that morning. But when he was walking by the service elevator, he was severely burned. Willie saved his life, dragged him out of there, risking his own life, took him to an ambulance, and he was whisked away to a hospital, really never to be heard from again. He spent 3 months in the hospital with third-degree burns, and his testimony would have showed categorically, without question, there was explosions set below, because the fire came up through a service elevator from below that burned him, making it impossible to be jet fuel from above, because it happened at the exact same time. Why wasn't his testimony given? Why? Because this whole thing is a farce. Let's go to another one in 9/11, Donna Marsh. She was a grandmother. Her daughter was 3 months pregnant. She's been on my show at least 5 times, talking about how she wanted to get to the truth. I remember right after 9/11, she gave a gut-wrenching speech in a park right near the United Nations building, protesting 9/11, where it brought me to tears when she talked about the situation and how the government has not allowed her and a number of family members to investigate this fairly so they can get justice about who killed their loved ones. Now, her story is amazing, because Donna Marsh's daughter was 3 or 4 months pregnant, and she was running out of the tower to save her life. She was one of the 200+ bodies that were recovered intact. And not only did Donna lose her daughter, but she lost her 3-month-old granddaughter. Now, she's another one that's been silenced. And I could go on and on and on with 9/11, talking about, how about Lou Caccioli? Lou Caccioli, the fireman, who I interviewed extensively. And he's been interviewed numerous times. Now, Lou came on, the last time Lou came on my show, it was about a 6-month interval. He talked about the same thing, about explosions as he was going up to help people up on the 60th floor. He said it was a battery of explosions. This wasn't a fire. Right before he was communicating with another one of his fire captains up high, stating, the fire captain telling him, we've got it under control. We've got it under control. This is a fire we can contain. Don't worry about it down below. But just as he said that, guess what happens? Explosions start going off, one after another, taking the lives of many of his friends. He was lucky and escaped. But Lou talks about it. He spent a year or two in counseling after that. He left the fire department. And when he came on my show, there was a 6-month interval between interviews. And I asked him, I said, Lou, why can't you come on? And he said, I can't go through this tragedy anymore. It's too tough for me, and I can't do it. It brings me back to when I first came on the scene. And when Lou Caccioli came on the scene, he was one of the first units that came on. And guess how he was greeted? One of his best buddies that he'd spent 20 years in the fire department with was killed when a body fell on top of him right in front of Lou's eyes. This is the tragedy that the New World Order and the Vatican bring to you. And still, America's in denial about what the Vatican and the New World Order is all about. Why have these people been silenced? Why isn't there justice still today? Well, what about Jim Rothstein, who was on my show? He was threatened with his life for bringing you the truth about the pedophile rings in this country. Now, does anybody realize that when he did this in the early 1980s, he was trying to help you to understand that this pedophile ring was orchestrated by the highest levels of our government officials, by the Vatican and Cardinal Spellman himself, with eyewitness testimony to the fact that this was going on. And when he had solid evidence to pin the real perpetrators of these pedophile rings to the wall, guess what happens? He goes to District Attorney Robert Morgenthau in New York. And guess what happens? Instead of Morgenthau issuing subpoenas, issuing search warrants, issuing wiretaps, he basically thwarts the investigation, tells our good friend Jim Rothstein to go back to the precinct, and in the meantime, they take away all the evidence that Rothstein has, and they quash the investigation. So the evidence that would have pinned these high-level officials above Morgenthau was taken by your good district attorney in New York, who, by the way, still holds that office as we speak today. Now, he is a traitor. He should be in jail for withholding evidence that would have saved a number of children's lives, but no, because we play this stupid game in this country. We play this game that we're afraid to deal with the top officials because they have so-called authority. More children have died, and Jim said that there's never been one investigation, and he stayed close to this because after he was let go from the police department, threatened with his life, basically, he says that there's not been one investigation that's ever gone to the top, including the Johnny Gosch investigation.
The President of the United States in 1963.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no secret is revealed. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President today.
You were both in skull and bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? I've got a vision for what I want to do for the country. See, I know exactly where I want to lead. It's so secret we can't talk about it.